Well, hello, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of Keeping Up with E-Commerce, brought to you by our friends at SAP Upscale Commerce. My name is Dan Gingiss. I'm a customer experience speaker, author, podcaster, and coach, and I am so happy to be here with you today. We got a really, really cool show. It's going to be a little bit different than some of the other episodes that we've had, but I think you're really going to enjoy it. You know, most brands have made the shift to digital already, or at least are en route to making the shift to digital, because that's where customers are, that's where the customer demand is. But in order to make this shift sustainable, brands need to adapt quickly. They need to adopt new technology. They need to be able to be nimble. So in this episode, we are going to talk about a couple of SAP partners who have innovated by participating in the SAP Upscale Commerce Hackathon event, where they developed e-commerce platforms in as little as 24 hours and created some really, really cool stuff. So excited to share that with you today. My guest today, first of all, from the SAP side, we have Shadi Gaddis, and he's the Global Director of Consumer Products Industry Solution. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me today.
Glad to have you. And you were the judge in the hackathon. So as we mentioned off stage, you're going to play the role of Simon Cowell for this show. So try to be nice.
Yeah, I will be. One of the people invited to be on the judging panel for that hackathon that we ran out of Canada.
Outstanding. That's great. And two of the participants in the hackathon. First, we have Justin Gorge. He's a technical architect for Live Area. How you doing, Justin?
Doing really well. Glad to be here. Thanks.
And tell us really quickly, what is Live Area?
So Live Area is actually a subsidiary of PFS, PFS Web, and we are an e-commerce design and consultancy. I am on the sort of SAP side of things. I specialize mostly in SAP Commerce, but then we also have other teams that do other things like Magento and Salesforce and so forth. So we basically provide a full service, soup to nuts e-commerce consultancy. If you're coming in and you need a whole new site, or if you're upgrading from something else or upgrading from an older version of something, we have people that kind of do all those things, and I do some part of them.
All right, fantastic. Well, I can't wait to hear about your hackathon project in just a minute. Also want to welcome to the show Bruce Patel. He's the Vice President and General Manager at Ascenta Digital. How you doing, Bruce?
Fantastic, Dan. Appreciate the time today.
And tell us a little bit about Ascenta Digital.
Absolutely. So Ascenta is a global systems integrator. All we do is SAP's customer experience technology. Been around about 21 years, actually based in SAP's Waldorf campus. We have two ways of looking at these projects. We both have the strategic side and the technical side. We have a group of strategists, designers that then work with our technical team to deliver optimal customer experience solutions that are ultimately powered by SAP technology. And I think that was one of the keys to our organization's success in the hackathon. And just one last prop for Ascenta. In 2020, we were actually SAP's Customer Experience Partner of the Year.
Outstanding. That's great. And we know how many thousands of clients SAP has, so that's yes. Really impressive. And I always just like to check in. Where's everybody? I want to say dialing in from, but we're not dialing in. But where are we connecting in from today?
Montreal, Canada. So we're going to bring them home. I know we're in a bit of a deficit right now, but we're going to make it happen.
Excellent. Okay, Montreal. It's about the extent of my French. Justin,
Shadi, I couldn't see the logo on your jersey until now, but I had a pretty idea who it was. I'm located here in beautiful Raleigh, North Carolina.
Excellent.
Excellent. And I am in crisp and cool Phoenix, Arizona, where we'll be about 109 today, but our suns are even hotter right now. So looking to bring home that NBA championship.
Fantastic. So, to our friends at SAP, we're just going to convert this to a sports show. I hope you're okay with that. Just chat sports here. All right. So, Shadi, tell us a little bit about the hackathon. Kind of how did it originate? What was the goal behind it? And then we'll get into some of the actual projects.
Yeah, so it actually originated from our sales team in Canada, led by basically our head of sales for our customer experience line of business, Marcelo Suhami, who basically had this idea and said, why don't we build some momentum? Why don't we create a hackathon? And what they did is they worked with 3 customers to define 3 specific use cases. So the challenges of the hackathon were not SAP ideas, were very real customer business opportunities that they were trying to create with speed. And then we recruited a couple of partners. The third player would be our SAP services team. And we basically ran a 2-day hackathon. The judging panel was comprised of SAP experts, myself included, as well as these customers that sourced these use cases for our partners to kind of experiment with. So part of it was to build a bit of I'll call it market awareness around our upscale solution. Part of it was also to engage partners and customers around our solution and get the conversation going. And part of it was also fun, right? It was generated to be a bit of a fun event at the same time.
Well, nothing says fun like a hackathon, right? So that makes sense. Now, Justin or Bruce, and both of you can chime in if you want. Were your projects for your own organizations, or did you have to select a client that you were sort of developing on behalf of?
Actually, neither of those. So like Shadi mentioned, there were some use cases that were drawn from actual SAP customer requests, and actually some of those customers then were on the judging panels. And so at the kickoff of the hackathon, each team was assigned one of those use cases.
Got it.
And so in our case, we had one that was implementing a buy online, pick up in store system, basically as an extension of an existing, like imagine you have a store that already sells brick and mortar, but then you're also working to sell online. But in this case, imagine that you're like a dollar store and you also have customers like small businesses, local businesses, or whoever who want to come in and buy in bulk. They want to be able to go on your website and buy the case, but your site doesn't support that. So our task was to implement that. And there are some details, some technical details, warehouse flags and things like that, that made it sort of the special sauce that made it worth doing. But that was the one that we were assigned, and then Isenta got a different one, and off you go.
And then is this go ahead, Bruce. Sorry.
No, go ahead. I was just going to add on to that. That there were use cases that were assigned out. We had inventory liquidation as the use case, and really for an organization that may have out of season clothes, other materials that they may want to sell and not sell them on an off-brand site, something that they can get up relatively quickly. But also, we take the view of how do you really understand that customer and that experience you're trying to develop, and then ultimately enable that with the Upscale platform.
Cool, I love it. So, Shadi, these were then designed with a certain customer in mind, but is this also meant to be an example that other companies can emulate using Upscale Commerce?
Absolutely. What I would say was common between the 3 use cases that were selected is that there are 3 use cases that would have not been viable in I'll call it a traditional e-commerce project that takes weeks and maybe months to develop. Part of the reason why, if you think of a pop-up store or inventory liquidation, it's very dynamic. It's very, it comes and it goes. And the third use case that we're talking about that Justin's team work on is a business model that they hadn't validated, right? So they weren't willing to do all of the investment to put up something to at the end say it flops, right? So when we talk about speed, I think part of what we're not talking about also is also the opportunity cost. Speed is also at the same time low cost in terms of resources, in terms of dollars, in terms of time, so that if the business opportunity doesn't match what you were thinking, it wasn't an expensive experiment to try, right? So the 3 use cases why it came to us, and it wasn't just like a regular sales cycle that we went and did, is because it wouldn't be viable in a kind of a traditional e-commerce project necessarily.
So let me ask Bruce, if you can execute on a project like this in 24 hours, why do e-commerce and other technology projects take so long in real life? Why can't we shorten that cycle for other projects?
Yeah, I think that's the goal of Upscale, obviously, right, is to take certain use cases that a traditional e-commerce or commerce platform can't handle or doesn't do as quickly, and get them up and running faster. There are still use cases. There's lots of e-commerce experiences that have lots of complexity on the back end that require a more enterprise level solution. But with Upscale, there are a variety of use cases of getting old inventory out, testing business cases, those types of things that you don't want to go spend 6, 9, 12 months to get up. You want to get it up fast, learn from it, and then be able to make those business decisions as you move forward, or use that platform to continually optimize and reimagine some of those experiences. And something like Upscale allows you to do that.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it seems like something like a liquidation project like yours might be useful for a certain amount of time. Then you might turn it off, but you might come back a year later because now you've got a new season that you want to liquidate. So
absolutely.
Tell me then, let's dig a little bit deeper into your project first. Tell me about how did you guys approach the project?
So one of the first things that we did was really look at it from the customer experience perspective, right? Our view of things is start with strategy and then enable that strategy with technology. Okay, we look at it from how do we create more meaningful customer experiences that are ultimately, in our world, enabled by SAP technology. So we went through and we actually developed a persona, Claire, put together the demographics around her, and in a real world situation, we do that customer research to understand that persona and then the type of customer journey that they expect and that's going to be the most relevant to them, right? And then you will take that and stand it up with something like Upscale. So we started with understanding who our target audience was, who our target customer was. Then we took it and we created a design that would resonate with that type of a buyer. So Claire, in this situation, we looked at her. She's 37 years old, female, annual household income of $150,000 plus. She's married. Her interests are in sustainability, and her hobbies are yoga twice a week. And then we looked at it from a goals perspective. She lives an active and healthy lifestyle. She takes care of the environment. She feels inspired through fitness. And some of her frustrations were around poor quality clothing, a busy schedule with limited time, and then finding the right look, quote unquote, look for her, right? So we put together this persona and then took that and started with the brand, created a brand called Reborn. So that's where women's fitness clothing company could actually take older inventory, it's reborn, right, and sell it through utilizing the Upscale platform, but also doing it in a way that's very targeted to that persona, right? Understanding what those needs are. Then it was the ability to take Upscale. Once we understood the persona, once we had the design elements we wanted in place, then we were able to take Upscale and literally within, actually, I think within a few hours, we were actually able to get it so someone could make a purchase. I think we accelerated. I think we won some additional points because we accelerated that piece of the process. But within a day and a half, basically, we had a full functioning e-commerce store that had additional functionality, was targeted to a specific consumer, and we were up and running in that time. And it was really this blend of, we had strategists on our team, we had designers on our team, and then we had technical architects on our team. And that combination of skills and people who were thinking and collaboratively working together developed this Reborn site.
That's super cool. I know that we have at least one Claire who's watching right now, and she commented that she thought that you were describing her. So maybe Claire wasn't just a persona. Maybe it was an actual person.
Maybe we did a little survey ahead of time. Yeah.
Exactly. That's really cool. Thanks for sharing the details of that. Justin, let's hear a little bit about your project.
Yeah, I mean, the process that we went through was kind of similar to what Bruce described. In our case, we had to be a little creative because we actually only had 3 people on our team. It was another guy named Marco Nicolini, who I work with frequently on other SAP stuff, and another friend of ours, Skylar Truax, who is more on like the Shopify Salesforce side. And I mentioned that because Marco and I come from sort of the large back-end SAP Hybris, back-end and front-end sort of coupled together size projects, and he and I together are a little less familiar with the new headless commerce world, whereas Skylar really brought that experience. And so for us, we didn't have the manpower necessarily to drop a persona and things like that. And what we did was, with the help of one of our coaches from SAP, we were able to suss out that the company we were actually talking about was Dollarama, which is a Canadian sort of dollar store enterprise. And so we were able to sort of go look at, okay, what is their business? Like, what are they doing today? And why would they really ask for something like this? And kind of go from there. And so the real, I think, realization that we came to was, much like Bruce said, that we were able to produce, a site by, I forget if it was, I think, Bruce, your team and mine might have been neck and neck on this. I don't remember exactly when we got the first order in, but the point is that we were able to essentially, get our catalog together, stand up the site, do a little bit of very minor design work on the templates, and use, the prepackaged PWA, Progressive Web App, templates that were available to get something stood up and get orders going through, and then really focus on modifying it, even though we only had 3 people, none of whom had ever used Upscale before. And as a team, at least, Marco and I had worked together a lot, but Skylar and the two of us really hadn't. And so we were all getting to know each other, getting to know each other's skill sets. And we had a really good balance of back end and front end experience there. But to be able to come together, all 3 of us, on a brand new tool set and crank through this hackathon, it really says something about how much the tools are advancing. And like you, Dan, said, why does it take 9 months, or why should it take 9 months, or what can we do differently, especially in sort of more narrowly scoped things like this, or proof of concept things where you want to try something out in the market and not invest $500,000 doing it or whatever. That was one of the things that we really enjoyed going through.
I think one thing that I would add is, as this hackathon was going on, both the teams from eCenta and Live Area had a day job, right? They had customers, buildable projects that were going on. So it's not like they took, 2 days off of their, existing customers that they had to serve to do this, right? So it's not like when you're doing a hackathon with university students that it's literally blocked out of their calendar, right? So when we say 24 hours, it wasn't, or 48 hours, it wasn't 48 hours full time. Sure. Evenings they had to go back to their families. There's a lot of stuff that happens with the real world. So I was personally impressed. I was not, obviously I come from SAP, I know the solution, but my mind was blown about how much they were able to deliver in that 48 hours. I was expecting something a lot more bare bones than what I saw personally. And just to give another example, I think eCenta came up with their first transaction in about 45 minutes. So the referee team wasn't even ready to look at it when they said we're done, right? They weren't even ready. Right. So wow. It surpassed our expectations in terms of speed, to be honest.
And in both cases too, I know that everybody went above and beyond the requirements also, and did some additional integrations. We did a search integration with Algolia, kind of because it seemed fun, right? Like, oh, I bet we can do this, and we were able to knock that out too. And so, there was, I don't want to say there was extra time at the end, but we really by the end felt like we were firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, I think a couple things, a couple points that I want to emphasize. One was, this was the first access these teams on both the Live Area and eCenta side had access to Upscale. So you imagine you're learning the product and you're building, and it's like building the plane in flight, right? That's literally what was happening. That goes to the ease of use and the speed at which things can be done. And I think from our perspective, I looked at our team. I looked at the team site, or the site, probably later in the day on the first day. I went to it, I looked at it, started scrolling through, and I think the biggest compliment I could give the team was I felt like I was at a legitimate business's website, right? So something in less than 20, I mean, literally, I think it started 9 a.m. and by 3 p.m., I was at a website that had a look and feel of a legitimate online retailer. And I think that was one of the biggest takeaways for me, was that you were able to build something that quickly. It was functional. It looked great, had a good user experience, and I could go transact at that moment. So,
That's
and I think so if
amazing.
you put in perspective, that was literally, I mean, you're looking what, 7 hours, 8 hours
Yeah.
to do that.
That's incredible. So, Shadi, I mean, both of these, I know you had three to judge. These two were, what strikes me about both of them is that they're legitimate, reusable, scalable solutions, and that many companies may want to use. So, how do you go about judging these?
Well, we had a bunch of criteria we were looking at, right? So we were looking at everything from the creative side, right? What was the look and feel? Because at the end of the day, part of e-commerce, if the site doesn't look functional or it doesn't look trustworthy, you're not gonna do a purchase. All the way to kind of judging, have they addressed the pain points? Have they went above the line and started doing some of those extra things Justin was talking about? So they went into integrations into third-party search providers to augment these capabilities. And there was different levels of difficulty. So you're trying to also balance a couple of things out, right? I think Justin's team's use case was a bit different because the use case they were trying to fulfill had a bit more, I'll call it inventory management, order management complexity than what Bruce's team was working on. So we're just looking at the criteria and trying to be fair. And I think what made it really hard to judge was, Esenta came with 5 or 6 people with a various degree of skill sets, right? They brought the strategist, they brought the UX person, they brought the technical architect. Whereas Live Area didn't necessarily have as many feet on the ground and maybe not as much of the diversity of expertise. So kind of balancing it out at the same time, realizing that there's just different skill sets being brought for a lot of very good reasons. But at the end of the day, they were neck and neck. I think Esenta was a bit over on the creative side because they had the strategist and the UX designer, and they went that extra mile with the persona. But on all of the technical stuff, it was a very hard one to judge from that aspect.
All right, so I'm dying to know here because nobody actually told me who won this thing.
Both teams won. So we had we had a surprise where we had more than one prize. So we had prizes per category.
It was a win-win situation.
Both teams
was a win-win.
did a fantastic job.
That's awesome.
Honestly, with use cases that aren't always easy, and like Justin hinted to, they didn't necessarily know which customer it was coming from, right? So once they figured it out, it helps put a lot of things into context. But once you don't have the context, you're still trying, like, why are we doing this? It's not always obvious. But when you understand that, like, why do buy online, pick up in store? If I'm a small business and I go into my small store and I raid the shelf, that's a really bad outcome. So if I can do buy online, pick up in store, they can think in advance, have that prepared so that you're not raiding the shelf. That was really the use case, right?
Got it.
And that's where speed comes into play, because it's not an obvious use case to think about what's the business benefit, right? So being able to test it quickly to see if it's if it actually brings the benefit, and if it does, then you keep investing in it and grow it. It is part of the value discussion that our customers were trying to prove out here.
All right, awesome. Well, we are just about at time. Bruce, Justin, I want to give you each 30 seconds. Tell me what you would advise to a company that wants to innovate with speed. Now that you've gone through this process, what would you tell somebody else? Bruce, why don't you start?
Absolutely. I think if history over the last, call it 18 months, is any teacher to us, our ability to be agile, think fast, and be able to think outside the box is vitally important to any organization moving forward, right? The ability to quickly adapt to changes in the overall buying environment. You have to be ready to do that. And I think when you look at things like Upscale, it gives you that flexibility. There were use cases of buy online, pick up in store in the past. Now it almost became a necessity over the COVID term. So the ability to think quickly and always be looking for that next way to deliver a more optimal and more meaningful experience to your customer.
Love it. Justin.
Yeah, I would say headless is where everything's going. Headless commerce, API first. And that's fundamentally, we haven't really talked about that, but that's fundamentally what Upscale is. It's a headless commerce system, and then SAP provides these PWA templates and stuff that give you a real jump start on what you need to do to get something up and running, but you're not necessarily limited to that. And we also didn't talk about like the different platforms, the mobile app generation that you can do all from the Upscale workbench. All of that stuff is where the puck is going.
That's right.
To make the Wayne Gretzky
and the
reference.
Tampa Bay net, to be clear.
Right,
in the
right.
Tampa Bay net, correct.
We hope so. No, but in terms of, to continue the metaphor, in terms of skating to where the puck is going, in commerce and in online business in general, being able to stand up something that is headless, API-driven, multi-site, multi-currency, multi-location, all this stuff, but also extendable with external integrations and things like that. That is traditionally so much harder in more mature, maybe classical platforms where everything was much more monolithic. And even though from the development side, we've tried over the couple decades, I don't know, to separate that stuff out, things like Upscale really seem to deliver on that.
That's awesome. I do want to give the feedback that I think we need a new term other than headless. That just sounds scary to me. So there's got to be a better word that we can use for that. But other than that, guys, awesome job. Really enjoyed learning about your projects. Shadi, Bruce, Justin, thank you so much for being here. Really exciting stuff. And if you are watching and saying, man, this SAP Upscale e-commerce thing, I need this stat. Well, here's what you got to do. Scan the QR code right here or go to sap.com/upscale commerce, and you can learn more about SAP Upscale Commerce and how you too, maybe not in 24 hours, I don't want to overpromise here, but very quickly can stand up an e-commerce platform or adjust or improve the one that you have. As you heard our guests say, the technology was an absolute requirement in order to make that speed happen. Thank you so much for being here. We will see you next time on Keeping Up with E-commerce. I'm Dan Gingiss, customer experience speaker, author, podcaster, and coach. We'll talk to you soon. Thank you.